On the day the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle that was a tent for the testimony. And in the evening there would be upon the tabernacle like a fiery appearance until morning. So it would always be. The cloud would cover it and an appearance of fire at night. And whenever the cloud was lifted from atop the tent, afterwards the children of Israel would journey, and in the place where the cloud would rest, there the children of Israel would encamp. According to the word of Hashem, would the children of Israel journey, and accordingly to the word of Hashem would they encamp. All the days that the cloud would rest upon the tabernacle, they would encamp. When the cloud lingered upon the tabernacle many days, the children of Israel would maintain the charge of Hashem and would not journey. Sometimes the cloud would be upon the tabernacle for a number of days. According to the word of Hashem, would they encamp, and according to the word of Hashem, would they journey. And sometimes the cloud would remain from evening until morning, and the cloud would be lifted in the morning, and they would journey. Or for a day and a night, and the cloud would be lifted, and they would journey. Or for 2 days, or a month, or a year, when the cloud would linger over the tabernacle, resting upon it. The children of Israel would encamp and would not journey. But when it was lifted, they would journey. And according to the word of Hashem, would they encamp, and according to the word of Hashem, would they journey. The charge of Hashem would they safeguard, according to the word of Hashem through Moses. Can I stop there?
You can. Okay.
They'd have to pack up after a day, the whole tabernacle, and just move on.
Right. I mean, there were a lot of people involved in the process, but I've gone camping with a lot of people, or like when family would go on these camp trips. So we'd have maybe 20 people that were in tents, T-E-N-T-S, not intense. So there were several times where we'd set up camp in the evening and break up camp in the morning. And after a couple of days, the kids, methodically did it, and were able to do it pretty quickly. And assuming that it definitely would take time, but after people got used to their roles and there were a lot of people, right? So so I can imagine it. I also once read a book about, I don't remember if it was Chief Joseph or it was somebody who was moving with a large number of tribes. So I think Chief Joseph was the Trail of Tears. I think there were a couple times where you had tribes that were Native American tribes that are moving long distances, and there was one where he had them moving in a kind of military formation where it was really organized. It was very organized, and it reminded me of this description here. And also there, it seemed like they could take down camp and set up camp pretty quickly after a while. Again, when you say pretty quickly, it still might have taken an hour or two or something in order for them to do it. But people got used to it, and everybody had their responsibilities, and they're able to do it. There's a couple things here that meet the eye, or my eye. One of them is in the first verse that we read, which was 15, Tesvav. It described the Mishkan for some reason as, they called it Et Hamishkan Le'ohel Ha'edut. The Mishkan to the tent of Edut, testimony. So the actual verse was, and on the day that they set up the Mishkan, it was covered by a cloud. Mishkan was covered by a cloud. Ohel ha'edut, so the tent of testimony. And then in the evening, it over the Mishkan, it looked like fire until the morning. So that's that first verse. But why do they add that descriptor, ohel ha'edut? So I don't know why here of all places they do it, but it's, what is it? You know, so Rashi says the Mishkan that was made to be a tent for the luchot. Now the Mishkan itself, the tabernacle, has the menorah in it. It has the showbread table in it. It has the incense altar in it, and it has the aron. Outside of the tent, it has the altar, the copper altar, where the offerings are brought. And if you, again, this is a subject that we revisit every time a new piece of data comes up. But this, from this perspective, the Mishkan is primarily a tent for the tablets. And when you're looking at the Mishkan, what is it essentially? What drives it? What is the engine that moves the Mishkan? So there seem to be two primary options. One is that it is for the luchot, and it's about the tablets. The other one is it's about the altar, that it's about the sacrifices. If you ask somebody, like, what happens in the Mishkan? What is the interface between the people and the Mishkan? I think most people would say it's the korbanot, it's the offerings. In fact, whenever I bring up the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash, people get nervous. And the reason they're getting nervous is that they get nervous about the korbanot, as if the purpose of the Beit HaMikdash is simply the korbanot. But here you see that it's describing the essence of the Mishkan, or the purpose of the Mishkan, as a tent over the luchot. Now, the Ramban, Nachmanides, had said at the beginning of Bamidbar that the Mishkan is a kind of mobile Sinai, that the primary feature, or at least at least from the perspective of Bamidbar, the primary feature of this place is in as much as it allows us to reconnect with Sinai. That Sinai doesn't have to be a one-time experience. The connection that we have at Sinai doesn't have to be a one-time experience. That the connection is something we can revisit. It's an opportunity to revisit it. So that is what we would call a luchos-centric Mishkan, that the center of the notion of the Mishkan are the tablets. There's another way of viewing the Mishkan and then the Beit HaMikdash, which is that it is a Mizbeach-centric Mishkan or Beit HaMikdash. In other words, it's altar-centric, that the primary vehicle, the place of primary contact between the Jewish people and the Mishkan, and for in that case, from that perspective, the primary purpose of the Mishkan are the korbanot, are the offerings that are brought. And I was suggesting too, and I think I've seen others suggest this, that depending on how you look at that, you could answer the question, would there have been a Mishkan if there hadn't been a golden calf? The Mishkan, the discussion of the building of the Mishkan actually happens before we're told about the golden calf, but there are a whole group of commentaries who suggest that was just a teaching decision. But really, chronologically, that's not how it unfolded. That the way it unfolded was, first there was the golden calf, and then there was the command to build the Mishkan. There are several commentaries and Rashi's included in that group of people who seem to suggest that the Mishkan is a response to the golden calf. But the Ramban, Nachmanides, does not agree with that. The Ramban suggests that we would have had the Mishkan whether we had the golden calf or not. And one simple kind of distinction that would help in understanding the difference between the two is, how do you see the Mishkan? Is the Mishkan primarily a house for the Luchos and an opportunity to revisit Sinai? That is something we would have done no matter whether there was a golden calf or not. The Sinai experience, the importance of the Sinai experience, the centrality of the Sinai experience in our spiritual lives was there before any golden calf. And therefore, the desire to maintain connection to that would have been appropriate whether there was a golden calf or not. Whereas if you see the Beit HaMikdash as Mizbeach-centric, that it's about the Korbanos, then you could understand that maybe why do we have to constantly reconnect? Because of the impact of the golden calf. Because there was a kind of separation between us and God that happens at the golden calf, we're constantly working to overcome that. We're constantly working to come close. We come close and then we fall back. We come close and then we fall back. We come close and then we fall back. And it could be that is the struggle that we have is there because of the golden calf. And that's why we need to constantly have a vehicle to help us come close again, because there is still elements of that golden calf there that are causing separation. Whereas with so again, it's very simplistic distinction here, because even let's say the Ramban has to agree that it talks about the altar. It talks about the preparation for what we would call the sacrificial service even before the golden calf. So obviously sacrifice is there too. But what is the dominant center? What is the primary vehicle that moves the Mishkan? So you could say it's the luchos. That's what's being emphasized here. Le'ohel ha'edut. It is a tent. Primarily, this Mishkan is a tent for the tablets. Mm-hmm. Okay, so but even if you like the way I was talking about Korban over there, the way I was talking about the fact that it helps to, I have a sort of regular practice that helps me come close, because there's something pushing me away, then I come close, and there's something pushing me away, then I'm coming close. So you could, again, simplistically, you could say that force is related to the golden calf. Whatever's pushing me away, that I'm overcoming, that I'm required to do this, related to the golden calf. But even the fact that I would need to revisit Sinai suggests that there's still, why do I have to keep on revisiting Sinai? In other words, why do I need a place that helps me revisit Sinai? If, let's say, you're saying that's because of the golden calf, Sinai is not because of it. This is a phenomena that I have noticed over the years, that there are people that are trying to teach, let's say, a particular practice. There are people that are teaching a particular practice. This could be within Judaism, but I've also experienced this outside of a Jewish context. One example is this guy, Sidney Banks, his name was. So years ago, there was somebody in St. Louis, this guy, Charlie Deutsch, who had visited this place in Laconia, Washington. It was called the Pransky Institute, Pransky. And it was run by this couple, George and Linda Pransky. And it's a kind of a place, I would say the main purpose of this place is to help you find a path to wellness, to something like that, to wellness and to full a kind of full realization of your being, kind of thing like that. And it's the teachings there are based on these principles that were taught by this guy, Sydney Banks. Sydney Banks is a guy who lived, I think, near Vancouver, who is a real sort of blue collar kind of guy who had a transformative experience. And because of this transformative experience, he sort of lived in this place of well-being and kind of wholeness. And he wanted to teach to others how they could get to this place. There are other people like him, like Eckhart Tolle is a guy like that. He also had a transformative life experience. There are older people like Ram Dass was another person like this. There's a person, an Indian sort of guru kind of person called Ramana, a person like that, where they had a transformative experience, and now they're trying to show you what the wisdom that they saw in this experience. With some of them, they just stayed there. Like this guy, Sydney Banks, he had the experience and he stayed in the experience. He didn't come down from it. Like Ram Dass, when he talks about it, he had the experience, but he comes down from it. He has the experience, he comes down from it. But some of these people, like Eckhart Tolle and this guy, Sydney Banks, they had a transformative experience and then they just stay in it. And they're trying to show you what they think could get you there. But the thing is, what I've witnessed around the Sydney Banks thing is, because Tippy and I went out to this place for a week, and it was a really cool experience. And you do go to a place like that where you do feel like you're at a very centered place of well-being. But so I even then afterwards went to a weekend with Sydney Banks, which also through Charlie Deutsch, he sent me on that. And so when I was at the, this was a phenomenon, we had a Pransky, but I noticed this at the Sydney Banks thing too, which is what's happening? This guy had an experience. He boils it down. He articulates for you when you're in his presence. It makes perfect sense. You understand it 100%. You really believe it. You don't just believe it. You see it in his presence, and you're feeling this sense of kind of centered well-being. You're in this place. And then when you leave, it lasts. There's like a glow of it for a while, and then it starts to dissipate, even though you're doing the practice, whatever it is that he's suggesting. But it starts to dissipate. And then you come back, so you want to come back to his presence. So he'll have these gatherings, a couple times a year. What I loved about him in particular was, first of all, he was very blue collar to begin with, and he didn't take on the trappings of anything more than that. He sort of stayed within himself. And also his conferences, his weekends, they were not in exotic locations and they were not expensive. Like it wasn't like he was using it as an opportunity to
break in the dough
and to live the life of of a wealthy person. So he really, I felt like, stayed within himself. And I did have the experience when I was with him. But I noticed, I talked to people that were there. There are people that have been coming back to these for 30 years. Why do you keep on coming back?
Because
if you get
his vibe.
Yeah.
It's his vibe.
Yes.
That brings you to him. You want to be in his presence.
Right. But what he wants is for you to be him. In other words, his frustration seems to be that what he would like is for you to have the experience he had, and then you would just be that. You wouldn't have to keep on coming back to him.
Oh. Yeah.
Why do we?
Why doesn't it last?
Why doesn't it stay? So Ram Dass talks about this, also that he was saying it about the psychedelics, that with psychedelics, you could go to this place after consuming mushrooms, let's say. You could go to this, psilocybin. You could go to this place, but you can't stay there.
Right.
And they, as much as they tried, he and
down.
Timothy Leary and all these people, they would try, but you would go there, you'd come down, you go there, come down. And he said at one point, Timothy Leary and him and several other guys, they're in this some place in the Catskills, or and they're consuming massive amounts of LSD, or because they're trying to stay there.
I knew my parents didn't want me in the Catskills for a reason.
Right, but they're trying to stay there, and they kept on trying. And he said there was one point where he was saying where he said the amount, I don't know, it's 400 milligrams or something. They're up to a very large amount, and they're doing it like every 4 hours because they're trying to get to a point where it'll stick. Well, they just stay at this place, but it never happens. No. And then at some point he develops despair and he decides to go to India because he has the suspicion that in India there are people that have gone there and stayed there. And he eventually bumps into the guy who becomes his guru, who he feels is one of those guys who went there and stayed there. And so he's one of the guys who talk about it. There's other, but I had this experience even with Sydney Banks. There was something called Call of the Chauffeur, which was a wonderful program that was done in a frum, kind of Jewish setting. The particular target audience were people who felt that their lives were sort of stuck and that they wanted the spiritual center. They wanted a spiritual center that was glowing, inside of them, but couldn't find it, and it resulted in issues in their marriage. Which these were people that were sort of stuck, and so that was the primary group. But it was really something anybody could go to. And this was another thing. Like a guy went to it. In this case, it was. I'll remember his name in a second, who suggested it. He's somebody who I feel a lot of love towards, and still can't remember his name right now. So he went to this Call of Chauffeur thing. He came to me like Charlie Deutsch, and he goes, "You got to try this out. You got to see this thing because I really think it's something." And he sent me out there. And so I experienced that. I went it was like a long weekend for there. And it wasn't the same thing as Pransky, but it went to a similar place. But this was, it was done in a frum Jewish setting. Pransky clearly was not a Jewish setting, even though he was Jewish, but it wasn't a Jewish setting. Sydney Banks, not Jewish. So it was the same thing. I call it the chauffeur. You'd go to this place and then afterwards you'd experience the glow. I even had my son Moshe and AY go on one, afterwards, because I thought it was so really wonderful that this was available for Jewish people. And but it was a similar kind of thing where you'd go there, you'd like learn a lesson, you'd sort of experience the glow, but then eventually it would dissipate, and then you'd feel like you'd need a recharge at some point to come back to it in order to get the embers, lit at the core again of that experience, burning. Get the fire burning. So I have seen, like in Eastern wisdom, they'll say that if you keep on going back enough, it will stick. But honestly, when I look at the various people, and I've watched YouTube videos of people that are around other, supposedly enlightened kind of. Yeah, by now all of this stuff should be online. Right. Well, you can watch them do it. Yeah. You can watch them around them. But again, you have the same thing. You watch them. These people are hanging out there. Why are they still hanging out there? Because they recognize that when they leave, after a while, it dissipates. It's not happening. This thing. And I don't know if there's a record of how many people, keep on going back and eventually it sticks. It doesn't, I don't see a lot of evidence of that, of that kind of thing. And I think about that when it's talking about even the Sinai experience. Obviously, lahavdil elef alfei avdolos, a million separations. I'm not saying this is the same thing as the Sinai experience, but at this. Why do we have to keep on revisiting the Sinai experience? Why do you need that to keep on coming back to it, to re-engage it? You could argue that with the Korban, that it has to do with the Chet HaEgel. Maybe, that there's some residue from the Chet HaEgel that we're trying to overcome, this sin of the golden calf. Maybe that's part of it to do with, and maybe the people who argue that the Mishkan is a response to the golden calf would say that even revisiting Sinai is something only required because of the golden calf. You wouldn't have to keep on revisiting it. If it wouldn't be for the golden calf, we wouldn't have to keep on revisiting this place. We would be ignited by it, and we would take it with us. Where is Sinai? Inside of all of us, because we had the experience. It lit our core, and we're now connected to the not just connected to it. We're it. We're it. We're always moving around in it, and we wouldn't need it. Maybe they could argue that. Maybe they would say something like that, because it's just that phenomenon of always need, to be around them. Why do I feel I need to be around them? I had it, between Sidney Banks and these other people, but like my experience, let's say with Moshe Shapiro or Rabbi Tursky in Milwaukee, or many, other like holy people that I have had a chance to be around. When you're in their presence, you're alert. You're on fire. There's the coals inside of you are lit, and then when you're away, they start to dim and they dim and they dim, and then you want to be back near them. You want to be, and you would like to hang out with them all the time. I remember at one point, there was a point where I was already starting to teach in Or Sameach, but it was going slow. I wasn't, the first couple of years where I was teaching at Or Sameach, I was basically like tutoring. I was waiting to get like a bump up and then more responsibilities, etc. It was coming slower than I wanted it to. I was trying to be patient. And then Moshe Shapiro started a new teaching thing. And I said to myself, you know what, I'm just going to go to that. And he told me, no, you can't come back to this. You got to go and do what you're supposed to do. You can't keep on coming back to what was. And you need to move on. And,
climb up that ladder.
Right. And again, I did still hear from him once a week, but this would have been an everyday thing. But that, in other words, we're supposed to.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do those people themselves who you want to be around and who fire you up, do they need to refire themselves, or are they in a state themselves? What do you think?
So I don't know. I mean, I haven't directly asked them that question, but I didn't see them doing that. Like it didn't seem like Ramosha himself had a person that he did that with, but maybe he had a place that he did it with. For instance, he used to daven at the kotel, Shachrit. He used to daven Vasikin at the kotel. So why did he daven Vasikin at the kotel? It could be that davening Vasikin at the kotel. Vasikin is sunrise at the kotel. So for years he did that. He was sort of known for it. You could go to the kotel and ask him where his minyan is, and people would point to where it was. But so why did he do that? Rabbi Tursky, with Rabbi Tursky, I don't know if he.
I wonder if the teaching itself is a firing up, relating.
Could be like with your students around you.
Right. Also,
that could be that takes you. But so I've never, I except for Ramosha, like telling me you got to move on, and that's sort of like leaving the nest. You could hear other people talking. I haven't directly heard from Rabbein, like from teachers about this experience. It's more like something I just personally experienced it.
So Reb Moshe felt that you should have incorporated that at least that right that you were at a level that had to go to another level. Right.
You need
whatever.
Right.
Yeah, whatever that teaching was that you wanted again, right. He felt that you should have it
for me, even if I had to articulate it, I just wanted to. I wanted
be with him. Yeah.
Right. As present, it was, you had this, like, you felt that inner spiritual core was alive. You read about it, let's say, with the Hasidim that when Hasidim are around the Rebbe, like the Maggid of Mizrich, like for Shalosh Shudas, like the Hasidim would always, they'd be around there listening to his Torah. And one time, there's a story that one time the Dubner Maggid, this is one of those Hasidish, Litvish stories, told by Hasidim, where they don't, they always, the Litvaks always come off as, they're the foil. The Litvaks are always the foil in the story.
Yep.
So this particular foil was he's called the Dubner Maggid. They're both called the Maggid. There was the Maggid of Mizrich, who was who took over Hasidus after the Baal Shem Tov, and he really, started to develop the various Rebbes who went out, and really the expansion. You could say the expansion of Hasidus starts with the Maggid of Mizrich. So he once invited the Dubner Maggid, who was a Litvak, to speak to his Hasidim at Shalosh Shudas instead of him. And after, I heard this story from Rabbi Tursky, Rabbi Michal Tursky. Afterwards, the student said, we don't feel from his stories what we feel from you. There's no fire. There's no fire. There's not, it's just like, it doesn't contain fire. Yeah. It doesn't contain what your speech is. Right, but so now you would say, like, they're coming back for the fire. I get it. I'm not blaming them. I get it. And when I used to go, by the way, when I was a buffer in Israel, and even sometimes when I was married, if I could, because I didn't live close enough once we were married, but I used to go to Tish's on Friday night. There was a Bell's Tish, there was the Slonim Rebbe's Tish, there was the Toldus Aron, the Lynn. There were several Tishes in the area around Meah Shearim and Geula. And you could sort of time it and go from one to another to another. And I was just like, I was on fire from those Tishes. So much so that I wanted my kids to experience it. I remember taking my kids to a Tish one time. And, but if you ask my kids, what do they remember? They remember getting pushed off the stands. Like they don't remember any of the fire I had. It wasn't the same experience at all. But right. But for me, they were like, and I could see going every week for the rest of my, life to get, just to be able to feel that. I think they were still having that fire. She was there. Yeah, for sure. They still have them now. Yeah. So and I could see somebody, going back and going back and going back for that. And why not, in order to feel that fire and that joy. But it does seem at some point that the fight, you would expect that at some point, or you would want that fire would stay lit and you wouldn't have to keep on going back to the source.
Right. I don't see how people would think that a chemical change, the mushrooms, would be the same as learning a practice. I mean, it alters I understand, it alters your consciousness enough that you can keep that altered consciousness, I guess. But
the thing was, the experience that they had, let's say, the profound experience that they had was as far as they were concerned, it was such a real touching of this place.
Yeah.
And he did not say it was out of, like when Ram Dass talked about it, he was not saying that it's not real, or he did not feel that. He felt like you could go to that same place. The problem is you can't stay there. Mm-hmm. There's something about them, and maybe he would say that because you didn't earn it. But again, some of these other people would tell you they didn't earn it. Sidney Banks, it wasn't like he was working towards this for years and then it suddenly happened. It just happened to him. Eckhart Tolle, just happened to him. Ramana, the Ramana Maharshi, these people, he made the point, it happened in the 1890s, but when he would tell people afterwards that he wasn't working towards this. It's just once it happened, it was, just, so they are not like a lot of, and it could be that these people have it in order for other people to know that it exists, so that other people could work towards it. And maybe that is important. Maybe somebody could say it's not the fault of the golden calf, that this is something that it's just that it always should be, that it's something you strive for. In Kabbalistic language, they talk about Ratzo V'Shov, that we move up and then we come back down, we move up and then we come back down, and that's part of the kind of dance of creation. There's a full tide, and then there's a high tide, and there's a low tide, there's a high tide, and there's a low tide. That this is a kind of rhythm and dance of creation, and maybe that's just the way it's supposed to be, and it's not anything to do with something we did wrong. And the fact that you can't stay there is because that's the design, and that these people who are staying there,
design is for all the people to be there, not just you alone. It's a camaraderie thing,
right? But even we as the people, you see us go close, let's say at Sinai, then we come back, then you go close, then you come back. And so it could be, yes, but that is a good point that you're making, that we, as opposed to some of these other teachings, the wisdom teaching from outside of Judaism, within Torah, it's meant to be something that happens to the community as a whole. It's not supposed to, not just about the individual. But even so why is it that the community as a whole doesn't just stay there? Why don't we just stay there? We did at Sinai. It says we were there like one heart. For that moment, we were there like one heart. So, but we don't maintain it. So again, you could argue that it's never supposed to be that way. Why are these people like this? Just so you know, so you can have a living symbol of what it is you're striving for, but they don't represent even the ideal. Somebody might argue they're not even the ideal. They're just, this is not something that is expected. This is, if you don't get this, you didn't do something wrong. The fact that he has it and you don't have it, that's not something you should bother yourself with, because that's not the goal to stay there. The goal is just to go there, and it's expected you're going to come down. You go there and it's expected that you come down. So Rabbi Twersky one time was suggesting that this was something like this is the meaning, of the sort of deeper meaning of a midrash. The midrash it says Vayetze Yaakov miBeer Sheva Vayelech Harana. Yaakov left Beersheba and he went to Haran. He was on his way to Haran. So the midrash asks, why did it have to tell us he left from Beersheba? We already know where he was. Why is it emphasizing where he left from? Because it wants us to know that when he was in Beersheba, because he's a tzaddik, when he was in Beersheba, he was the light of Beersheba. He was the splendor, hu hoda, hu hadra, hu ziva. He was the shine of Beersheba. There was like a light, there was a shine, there was a splendor in Beersheba. And then when he left, it was felt. It was felt. There was like an emptiness. The light left, the splendor left, the shine left. So the Yetzias Atzadik min hamakom osa rosha. When a tzaddik leaves a place, it leaves a void. It leaves a mark. You can tell. He was there, now he's not there. You can tell. So that's the medrash. And this medrash seems to be, something about this subject, a little bit touching the subject. But he had a slightly different angle on it. He said, and I don't know what it, this I don't know if he even told me who this was in the name of. I think it was the name of somebody. So he said there's a sort of a Hasidic reading on this medrash. B'yetzias hatzadik min hamakom, when a tzaddik leaves a place, osa rosha, he makes a mark. He makes a mark. Because the tzaddik himself, so this is what he said. He's leaving Israel, and he's going to go to Chutz La'aretz. He's leaving his father's house, and he's going to go to the house of Lavan. This is going to be what you would call a yerida. You're going to go down in spiritual stature, down in spiritual experience. You're going to be, this would be like you're visiting Israel, now you're coming back to Chutz La'aretz. So you know you're going to, this is, inevitably, it's going to create a yerida. You're going to go down. So what happens is if somebody's never experienced this before and they don't know anything about it, they assume that whatever glow they had in the high place is going to continue to exist when they're in their low place. And that they find out isn't the case. So let's say the next time they go, so now they'll say to themselves, this is probably not going to last, so I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to experience as much as I can because eventually I'm going to go down. That would be more of an enlightened path where at least you're going to make the most out of the experience up there. But he said the tzaddik, what does the tzaddik do? The tzaddik actually makes marks, and he makes marks so that he can find his way back up. That's the goal, so that you can find your way back up to this place. So it's like Hansel and Gretel, except in a way that instead of with breadcrumbs, right? So that they actually stay. If they would stay there, they'd find their way back. That was the point. You find your way back. So this is what the tzaddik is trying to do. The tzaddik is making marks so that he can find his way back. But what I would ask the author of that teaching was, when the tzaddik finds his way back, is he expected to live there, or does he go down and come up and go down and come up? So I think there are people that assume that the tzaddik stays there. Let's say the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I think the Hasidim would assume that he never leaves that place. He's in that place, he never leaves that place. That he's like one of those people. And I wouldn't doubt it, that he somehow went to that place and he just never leaves it. And he doesn't come down. But is that the general expectation? In other words, the Hasidic understanding of a tzaddik is that they're somehow they're born with a different kind of soul and they have their particular role. Maybe this is what it means, that they're born with the ability to go to this place and stay in that place. But the rest of us, the Benoni, the ones who are not the tzaddik, so we can't stay there. And it could be that's the meaning of Benoni. I don't think this is the Chabad meaning of Benoni, but I think this is a possible meaning of being. What does it mean to be in between? In between. Benoni means in between. So I think that the meaning is more like something that's described by Eliyahu on Mount Carmel. Eliyahu says to the people on Mount Carmel, he says, how long are you going to be jumping between the fences? You're jumping between the fences. He actually uses the word Piseach over there, like Pesach, the word Pesach. But we translate the word Pesach as Passover, because we say what happened is the Jewish houses are marked with blood. God passed over the Jewish house and went to the Egyptian house, then passed over the Jewish house, went to the Egyptian house. So we call it passing over. The Rabbi Foreman says that's not, he doesn't think that's what the word Pesach means. It doesn't just mean to pass over. The word itself is used in Ishayahu to describe, and over here by Eliyahu. By Eliyahu, it's going back and forth. You're jumping from one fence back to another, one fence back to another. You're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. That's what Eliyahu is talking about. And that's like an eagle.
This way.
Right. Passover is just going like this. You just passed over and then you moved on. This is you keep on going back and forth. There's a usage of the word about an eagle that passes over its young or its nest in order to protect its young from other things. So it's not just passing over it, it's going back and forth over it. This word Pesach, it's going back and forth over it in order to protect it. So he was suggesting that's more likely what it means, that Hashem was hovering over. He was like going back and forth over the Jewish houses to protect them from it. But when Eliyahu is using it, it means like you're going back and forth from one fence to another. To me, that's a Beinoni. In other words, Beinoni means in between. I'm constantly jumping in between. One day I'm over here, one day I'm over there. One day I'm over here, one day I'm over there. And why? In other words, I can't stay. Eliyahu is like rebuking me. Stay, stay. So on Yom Kippur, we actually articulate the words that the people said. They said, Hashem hu Elokim. It was like they were declaring. They were declaring at that point. When Eliyahu, said to, the people, when they see the miracles being done, the people shout out, we're there. We're where you want us to be. We see it clearly. Hashem hu Elokim. We have no doubt in our minds. We see it clearly. They're inspired by the events of the thing, but then they slip back. Eventually they slip back. And this is a source of terrible frustration to him. Why can't they stay there? Why can't they stay there? Right? But and this is the thing of the Beinoni, not the Tzaddik, the Beinoni, the rest of us that are not the Tzaddikim. We go there and we want to, but we can't stay there. So I'm wondering out loud, from this notion that we're carrying Sinai with us so we can revisit it instead of us carrying Sinai within us. We have this tent that we can revisit and get reignited. So is it, again, it could be because of the Chet HaEgel that we are, that we can't stay there, or it could be that this is just part of the phenomenon of being a human creation, that it's not expected, it's not built into creation that human beings should be able to stay there. You get there and then you come back. You get there and you come back. Maybe the goal is to go higher and move higher and not always come back to the same exact place. Right. To me, a little bit higher. For me, the great model of this is getting stuck in the snow. When your car is stuck in the snow. So you rock back and forth. You rock back and forth. You rock back and forth. At one point, you rock out of it. You rock out of the rut, right? So maybe that's also it. It's the goal. You're not necessarily coming back to the same place you were in the beginning. Each time you rock back and forth, you're going to a higher place, and maybe you rock out of that rut and you go to some other place. But still, is it expected that you're going to be at that? The pinnacle, to be at the pinnacle that you're going to be able to stay. That maybe that's too much to expect from it.
Rabbi, maybe, the whole story in Bamidbar, in the desert, is of going back and forth. I mean, the people see something miraculous and get fed and they're up there. And then because miracles do not sustain, I think that is so important in this. Even the miracle of the Red Sea, even the miracle of coming, the people are back where they were,
Right.
And so you need to have kind of a miraculous event or like you have this feeling that you have when you're with a certain person, or and then it can't last. It can't.
Right. So, and it doesn't necessarily mean you always come back to the exact same place.
No.
Maybe as you're rocking, you eventually the place you come down to is a higher place, and maybe this is a path to to growth, etc. And maybe the value of it was just to show you the goal, so you can see what a high place looks like, so you can envision it, so that you can long for it and see it. And again, maybe there is a part of our design that where if it wouldn't be for certain decisions we made, that that is a possibility. I'm not saying it's not a possibility. Maybe it is part of it that you could go there and stay there. Or maybe, like some of these people believe, if you keep on going back there enough, you stay there. Or it's possible that this was part of the design, that there is that the there is not There is no there, at least for us. Maybe there is for Lubavitcher Rebbe or somebody like
Well,
that.
is there a certain kind of existence that we need not to be in that place to carry on? You know, like to do our business. You know what I mean? I don't know.
They do say
if you get to a place and you get stuck.
No, I'm just wondering if the kind of
they do say,
of
I don't know what this means, but they say with tzaddikim that they choose to go to a world, let's say to go to the lower world. Let's say any soul. When you talk about the doctrine of reincarnation of Gilgulim, so they'll talk about a soul agreeing to come into this world. Which is coming back down because they're in a high place. Right. Or that tzaddikim agree to go to a lower world. In other words, in order to reach down to help the people come up, so that they themselves agree to which for them is some kind of Eureka, going down. But again, this is like, again, when they go down, apparently they're even though they're going down, they've still got the fire in them.
Right. Don't you wonder, like, how much self-awareness? I mean, if the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, is all that is believed, how much self-awareness, or does he just carry on in this wonderful? Do you kind of see what I'm saying? Is how much reflection about who?
I don't know.
Who he is.
I mean, I don't like some of these people. It's hard for me to tell if they, let's say Sidney Banks. It was hard for me to tell if he understood what other people are going through. I know he knew that they don't have it, but it looked like he thought you could get it by just doing these practices, even though these people around him are trying it for 30 years and they're still not, they're not. Right. So it could be he doesn't understand it. It didn't seem that way with somebody like Lubavitcher Rebbe. It didn't seem like he didn't understand people. It seemed you never hear him frustratedly asking people, "Why aren't you here?"
Right.
Why aren't it? Doesn't. I don't know.
Because I think he was constantly learning. He was constantly raising himself up.
Right, and I'm sure I don't know what it was like to be him.
Right.
If he felt like he was always there. These other people definitely felt like that, like Sidney Banks or Eckhart Tolle or some of these other people at Ramana. They felt like they were already always there. There was a there that they were in, that they felt like they were always there. And again, I'm not saying it's the same there. I'm just comparing it. It's like, I'm not saying it's the same there, but I'm just saying you could see there's certain people that are just whatever that, there is some kind of, place that looks the same. I'm not saying it's the same place because I'm not.
Should we? Right. Should we take a lesson from the life of Moses? From Moshe. I wonder, because we know that he was, well, they would say bittul to Hashem so much, but then he inserts his own. Please let me go. Let me go into that land. You know what I mean?
Right. But you could argue that his asking is there is a level where you could say that his asking is just because he's a human being. This is what human beings do.
Right. Right.
Because human beings it's not because he has some kind of personal, this is the full expression of a human being. It could be argued. The fullest expression of a human being is to ask God, is to beseech God. Ramosha Shapiro said that the Gemara in Bava Kama, it identifies 4 types of damagers. There are 4 types of damages or damagers. There's like 4 headings of damage. So one of them is called mave. Now mave, so there's like the Gemara says, what is mave? Mave zu adam. This is man. And Ramosha Shapiro used to say, why? What does it mean, mave zu? Because mave means to request, to need, to ask. So he said that man in his essence is asking. This is like when Yitzhak says, Hakol Kol Yaakov. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, and the Medrash says it's talking about prayer. In other words, that so you could argue that it's not an indication of a lessening of it, but that Moshe, as the fullest expression of a human being, is essentially always just in tefillah. He's just he's always in prayer. He's always and always wanting to do mitzvahs, always wanting to do the service of God. So that wouldn't be necessarily because he feels he's far from God. The one thing is that part where he's in the cave there, and he's asking, why do the righteous suffer? There, I mean, Aviva Zornberg's treatment of that is that he's in a dark place over there, in the nook. Anyways, so that is just thought inspired by that verse.
Thank you.
I look forward for us to communicate again. I say we do it next week at the same time.